Tracking the news cycle over the last while, we noticed that questionable behaviors engaged in by Fox News in the post-election days of 2021 have now caught up with them, or are at the very least beginning to be a potential serious problem. Dominion, the voting machine company, has sued them for defamation, and now the case is at the deposition stage. And what is being revealed looks quite ominous for Fox, even if, as is also believed, the standard for proof in these cases is quite high. But what we are learning appears to be incontrovertible evidence that Fox, in the form of not only some of its key personnel, but also all the way to the head honcho, was completely aware that what Trump was claiming about the election being stolen was false, and what agents of his, such as crazy Rudy Giuliani and even more crazy Sidney Powell, were claiming was nothing more than pure excrement in the form of a completely made-up narrative filled with falsehoods and conspiracies designed to stoke up the aggrieved Trump followers. It is indeed remarkable to learn that the usual suspects we're aware of, most of you know who these people are, these well-dressed, pitiful scoundrels masquerading as genuine news people, were lying through their teeth when not just once or even a dozen times, but rather hundreds of times, parroted Trump's big lie about the election, even while in the back room, in person and or via text and email, were stating in clear and unequivocal terms that the whole thing was nothing but BS. And maybe even more remarkable is to see the head honcho, the Australian crooked prune himself. By the way, no insult to Australians, most of whom are very fine people, but one wonders why the US allows one of the maniacal, egotistical, and very crooked ones to malevolently manipulate our media environment the way this man has for over 2 decades. I'll leave that aside for now. It's a separate subject. But as I was saying, even more remarkable is to hear about Murdoch testifying that he knew that what they were saying was false, but chose not to order them to stop, what an honest person would do. But of course he didn't, precisely because he is quite obviously totally dishonest. And worse, greedy from head to toe. So in his words, it wasn't about blue or red parties, it was about the green. Because if they didn't continue lying and gaslighting, their viewership would drop and they wouldn't make as much money. Seriously, Rupert, how much effing money do you need? And in the end, it's money that is in play here, because the Dominion lawsuit is not a criminal endeavor. Rather, the company is seeking redress for the enormous damage Fox did to their reputation and to their financial bottom line. Now, it isn't easy to come up with valid charts for business enterprises because you can argue for the value of casting it for the registering of the business or the start of the actual location, etc. But I decided to use the time of their very first on-air programming, which was October 7th, 1996, 6 a.m. in New York. This chart does feel like a fit because Libra rising with the Libra sun and Rahu nearby aligns with their self-branding as fair and balanced. Definitely Libra qualities. And admittedly, it is true that in some sense this channel does practice a bit of this, since you will see programming that is indeed presenting both sides of political issues and at times even rejects arguments advocated by the right wing they more fundamentally represent. But sadly, in an overall sense, where it matters, particularly in prime time, they are shamelessly right-wing, and their presentations very, very often are little more than pure propaganda, and worse still, often completely made-up garbage through the mouths of, the usual suspects. Now, Venus ruling that ascendant, but in the 12th sign, does suggest the message, despite being in clean and proper Virgo, by being in the 12th, in proper alignment and agreement with soft criminality, will be too tempting to resist. And the Moon-Mars conjunction in Leo facilitates sanctimonious and ostentatious presentations to drive the point forward. Meanwhile, Pluto squaring that Venus means in the end, they are seeking power and influence at all costs, and this is where soft deviations from the truth can turn steel hard, and the sympathy with criminality goes up a considerable notch. Born on a Uranus station correlates with this planet's usual comradeship with the self-willed nature of business people, entrepreneurs, or in general, any philosophy in which the individual's power is paramount And this planet trines the ascendant, which turns it into a very smooth expression of this particular energy. Neptune, also stationary in Capricorn, and likewise trine the ascendant, at least geometrically, even if not by sign, is the classic aspect enabling smooth video programming, although in Capricorn on the downside, it can be very calculating. And in any case, Neptune itself, also on the downside, is notorious for illusions and deceptions, and I have to say this new station is notorious for this approach. And finally, a Libra Sun opposing Saturn and Eris on the other side in Aries, but forming a T-square with a Capricorn Jupiter, also suggests, by way of the Jupiter at the top of that T-square, an alignment with status quo conservative philosophy. Now, as to the fate of the current lawsuit, well, you can see that they are definitely feeling the heat, because Pluto has been transiting over Neptune since 2021, which encompasses the period during which this lawsuit was filed. But now, as the pace has picked up, Uranus has been squaring the Moon-Mars conjunction and still does so for the next 3 months or so, even while by next month, April, Saturn locks into an opposition to Venus, an aspect that is not going to complete until February of 2024. And finally, the transiting Neptune opposes Mercury all of this year, all of next year, and most of 2025 as well. This would tell us there is plenty of time for their train to go off the rails, meaning a judgment ordering them to pay a ton of money as punishment for their malfeasance. After all, that Venus is in the 12th, but aside from ruling the first sign, it also rules the 8th, which is other people's money, or, put differently, a perfect conduit for having to pay for your misdeeds. And transiting Jupiter, currently opposing the Sun, isn't good because it is helping reveal their previously very malevolent exaggerations. However, when it goes into Taurus, which it does in May of 2023 until the summer of 24, it's no better because it will square the Moon and Mars and do a 150-degree aspect to the Sun from the 8th sign, which more than negatively counterbalances the help from the trine it makes to Venus and Mercury during the same period. In other words, more fuel to the notion of a payoff they'd rather not make. But this Jupiter at the top of a T-square is always primed to deliver a problem verdict if the circumstances so align. So, bottom line, very good possibility Fox News, which really should be called Fox Noise, will have to pay up. But on the other hand, the Neptune opposition to natal Mercury also suggests to me they aren't going to stop lying and propagandizing anytime soon. However, by the time we get into 2025 and through 26 and 27, we are into even more dangerous territory as Saturn returns and eventually opposes that Sun, signifying the kind of period when real change toward being a more honest news station may be forced upon them by law and or by circumstance. And I truly and sincerely hope that happens, because I find this station, including the owner and many of its key people, to be utterly odious and repulsive.